Has science killed God? Well, the answer is no, obviously, but I'm going to explain why it's no to equip you to share this truth with others. Science is the systematic process of the study of nature, of the natural world and the cosmos, through experimentation and observation. That is what science is. So it cannot prove or disprove God, because by definition, God exists outside of these things, for he created them. I hope that makes sense. So science can't disprove God. What I will say is that in my own little valley church, Noddfa Church, we have a chemistry teacher, so a scientist, Liz, she's watching, a geophysicist, we have countless engineers, we have countless medical professionals, we have a young lady, Ellie, who I've seen watching as well, her degree's in quantum mechanics. In our wider cluster of churches, we have a gentleman who's a doctor of genetics. He got his PhD in genetics at Cambridge. There's several mathematicians and medical doctors and what have you, psychologists. One gentleman at another church we are linked to is a physicist, and he told me that if he had to explain all that we know now about modern physics regarding creation to a Stone Age person, Genesis 1 absolutely nails it. And that's encouraging to hear, isn't it? I have another friend who did his postgraduate degree in molecular biology at Cambridge, and his paper was actually on undermining Darwinism and the flaws of his scientific approach. And he did very well, he passed his degree, and then he went over to the US and worked in a lab for a Nobel Prize winner. In fact, 65% of Nobel Prize winners in the last century, so we're talking modern science here, they admit to being Christian. And I say admit because some wouldn't be brave enough to admit in today's secular culture. There's only a small amount, a small minority, who are indeed atheists, as you have others that follow other faith groups. You have the likes of Einstein. Hi Anil, good to see you. We have the likes of Einstein, who was Jewish. Herman Bavinck, who discovered quantum mechanics, a Christian. More recently, Francis Collins, who was the chief science officer for the Obama administration. He was famed for decoding the human genome. He became a Christian during that process. He found God through his scientific study. You've got James Tour, Nobel Prize winner. He's professor of material science at Rice. He's a Christian. Michael Behe, Christian. John Lennox, Christian. There's many others of high profile, famous scientists who are Christian. And let's be fair, they probably all know much more about science than most people watching this video. And yet, they are all Bible-believing Christians. And this, friends, is because the Bible and science are not opposed. That is a cultural myth. They're only opposed, as I forget who said this, it's a great quote, it's not one of mine. Science and the Bible are only opposed like the thumb and the forefinger are opposed, because with them both you can pick everything up. That's good, isn't it? Let's have some hearts for that quote. Bible and the Bible and science, God and science, they are not opposed. They're not opposed. We have seen more evidence in recent years from the scientific community that prove the Bible is correct. A lot of archaeology, a lot of carbon dating is actually justifying the Bible. We're seeing a lot of the Bible be proved. And I believe it was Galileo who said that any point of contradiction between the book of God and the book of nature is because of our lack of understanding of both. So it's our ignorance that causes them to appear to contradict, not science or the Bible. It's us that fail. So the argument that science has killed God, or science versus God, is just a fallacy. It's another false argument, another modern cultural myth. What we do have, though, however, is theism and atheism, because you get scientists in both camps that can justify both, or think they can justify both claims through the same evidence. Someone would look at DNA and say, doesn't this justify evolution? Someone else would say, look at the DNA, doesn't it show intelligent design? And I think it's fascinating that the first man to decode the human genome became a Christian in that, or during that process, praise God. One interpretation believes in a virgin cosmos, and that nothing produces everything, which has never been proven scientifically. But they believe nothing produced everything, and as a result, you are here by random chance, a bunch of evolved proteins floating on a rock for no meaning or purpose, totally governed by other evolved bunch of proteins floating on a rock who are driven by their hormonal urges, and that's a scary place to be, friends. The other worldview, the theistic one, the Christian worldview, believes not in a virgin cosmos, but in a virgin birth, and it teaches that all human beings are image bearers of God, and thus require dignity and love from birth, and that creation has meaning, that gives us purpose and defends justice and promotes love. So I know which view I think is better and more plausible based on the reality of our existence and who we are as human beings, but I'll leave it to you to think about and decide. On a side note, I am often asked what books are most influential to me, or what books were most influential to me in my early Christian walk other than the Bible. And I'm going to give you these books so you can go away and read them. The first one is Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And it's full of apologetics like this and rationalises God. He's one of the finest academics ever to be born out of our nation, and he became a Christian later on in life and defends Christianity wonderfully there. So Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. The second book, Holiness by J.C. Ryle. That changed my life on how I should live as a Christian. Knowing God, that I know Andrew is reading, who's watching this at the moment, by J.I. Packer. Phenomenal book, rooted all my doctrine in who God is. The New Man by Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones, an exposition in Romans. Phenomenal. Allowed me to deal with a lot of my guilt and shame that I was carrying in my early walk with God. And the fifth most influential book in my early Christian life is The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. That's right, you heard me correctly. The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. Why? Because the arguments he raises in his book were so bad, it turned me, a once professing atheist, the other way. And his recent efforts, the book he brought out last Christmas, most of his community have discredited him for that. So friends, has science disproved God? Absolutely not.